What if the thing meant to heal you nearly broke you instead? This isn't just a story about a mother and her son. It's about how trauma can wear the face of a gift, how love can carry poison, and how reconnection isn't always what it seems. People say time heals everything, but what if time only deepens the cracks when silence is left unexplained? Imagine receiving a birthday present from the one who hurt you the most. Something that smells like home, but tastes like danger. That's what happened here. What started as a sweet gesture quickly spiraled into fear, suspicion, and emotional survival. Today's story takes us into the emotional maze of a mother who hadn't seen her son in 3 years. Until one morning, a box of homemade cookies arrived at her door. No warning, no message, just nostalgia and an unshakable feeling that something was wrong. Behind those cookies hid a truth so heavy, it nearly shattered the little piece she had left. But what if the real danger wasn't in the package, but in the silence behind it? This isn't fiction. It's a reminder. In families, the lines between love and hurt can blur fast. Sometimes, the most dangerous things come wrapped in good intentions. As you listen, ask yourself, what would you have done? Would you eat the cookies? Asterisk, would you open that door? This story may stir something inside you, and that's exactly why it must be told, because forgiveness sounds noble, but safety is sacred. And when those two collide, the truth doesn't always come with a warning. She hadn't seen her son in 3 years. 3 long years of silence, no calls, no visits, not even a birthday card. Every holiday became a painful echo of what once was. So when the doorbell rang that morning, she expected nothing but a delivery slip. But there it was, a box. Small, simple, yet heavy with meaning. Inside, a batch of homemade cookies and a short note, "Happy birthday, Ma." And just like that, a wave of emotion crashed in. She smiled, but it didn't land clean. Her heart hesitated, stood by old wounds and fragile memories. Their last words had been sharp, final, and now's gesture, unexpected, warm, whispering of something softer beneath the silence. The cookies brought back memories, her boy at age 10. Helping in the kitchen, sneaking bites of dough. Could this be his way of reaching out? Was it peace or something else? To an outsider, this might seem like forgiveness, a second chance. But anyone who knows fractured family ties knows it's never that simple. Gifts especially, the unexpected ones, carry messages. Somi, obvious, others, hidden. Why now? Why cookies? Why this silence? Reconnection and guilt often wear the same face, and love and manipulation can sound exactly the same. She didn't know yet which one was speaking. She placed the box gently on the kitchen table, the same table where birthday candles once stood and heated arguments once echoed. The scent was comforting. Her instincts weren't the moment Shuv felt like a hug from the past, but instead, it felt like a knock on a closed door, familiar, yet foreign. Nostalgic, yet unnerving. Something inside whispered, "Look closer." And that whisper grew louder every minute, because sometimes what arrives as a gift isn't meant to heal, but to stir. And love, especially the kind tied to old wounds, can come wrapped in confusion. What began as a touching moment was about to unravel into something much darker. The cookies were not the whole story. They were just the beginning. What this mother didn't yet realize was that her son's gift came with layers of suspicion, and what she'd soon uncover would change everything. She held the cookie box in her hands, a little longer than necessary. There was sweetness in the air, but also a tension she couldn't shake. Her fingers hovered over the wrapping paper, almost afraid to touch what could either heal or hurt. Was this really just an innocent gesture? Or something more loaded? Her thoughts spiraled. Forgiveness is one thing, but trust, that takes more than sugar and flour. Still, she opened the box, hoping for peace, but bracing for impact. The cookies looked exactly like the ones he used to bake with her. Chocolate chip, slightly uneven, full of personality. She brought one close to her nose and smiled, but beneath that smile, her heart raced. Something felt off, like a song that's just slightly out of tune. Her gut didn't scream danger, but it didn't feel safe either. That strange mix of love and alertness was overwhelming. So she ate nothing, not yet. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she didn't trust the silence. This kind of tension isn't loud. It hides in quiet corners, between lines and memories. She stared at the cookies, as if they might speak. That's what unresolved trauma does. It makes even kindness feel suspicious. She wanted to believe this was a new beginning, but deep down, she knew the story wasn't done writing itself yet. Then came the flashback of everything left unsaid. How he left. How she begged for a call that never came. That emotional absence carved something deep in her. And now the cookies sat like messengers from the past. They blurred the lines between guilt and affection, between hope and suspicion. What should have felt sweet now left a bitter taste in her chest. And yet, she wanted to believe that maybe people change, that maybe time heals, but the tension in her body didn't lie. This wasn't just a mother craving reconnection. This was a woman who had learned to read between the lines, and those lines were buzzing. The warmth was real, but so was the unease. And soon that unease would find its shape in a place she never expected to look. The morning after receiving the cookies, she noticed something strange. Her trash bin was slightly ajar, not weed-you open, just enough to trigger her instinct. It wasn't the wind, new animals. Someone had touched it, and that quiet unease from before begun to grow. Her heart beat faster. This was no longer just emotional tension. It was physical now. She approached the bin slowly, holding her breath without even realizing something was wrong, and whatever it was had been right there. She lifted the lid and saw something that didn't belong. A small bottle, dark, unmarked, out she have placed. It wasn't hers. She knew everything that entered her home, and this was foreign. Her mind raced. Why would someone put this here? And who? The first person she thought of was Zim, her son. A horrifying thought. One she instantly pushed away, but it lingered. The bottle felt heavy in her hand. Not just physically, but symbolically, it marked a shift from doubt to dread. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe a neighbor's trash, maybe a delivery error. But it didn't add up. The bottle had been tucked, not tossed. It was placed carefully, deliberately. That changed everything. She set the bottle on the counter, right next to the cookie box. Now, two objects sat before her, each loaded with meaning. One suggested reconnection, the other something darker. Together, they created a storm of conflict. She opened a browser tab, typed the words, "Small dark bottle, no label, poison." What she saw horrified her. It wasn't proof, but it was enough to validate her fear. She began to retrace every moment. Since the cookies arrived, was there a pattern? A message? A warning? It felt like she was unraveling a mystery inside her own life. The kind of fear that grows silently until it becomes impossible to ignore. A mother shouldn't have to question the safety of a gift from her child. But now, she did. And she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just sat, staring at both the cookies and the bottle, trying to understand two objects, one day, opposite meanings, same source. It wasn't about proof anymore. It was about intuition, and hers was screaming. She had to act, but carefully, because the line between love and danger had never felt thinner. And what she'd uncovered next would cut deeper than she ever imagined. Later that evening, she called him. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. But inside, she was trembling. There was no accusation in her tone, just curiosity wrapped in caution. She asked how he was, why he sent the cookies after so long. His answers vague, disjointed. It felt like he was walking a rope, one he didn't want to fall from. But it was his pause when she mentioned the bottle that told her everything. Not with words, but with silence. That single pause cracked open the truth. She pressed gently, then firmly. Asterix, did you leave something else? Asterix, she asked. He hesitated, and that was it. He stumbled through an explanation, cleaning out old stuff, just tossing things. But none of it made sense. She remembered how he used to lie as a teen, adding too much detail, circling around the truth. The same patterns returned. And Ibdu, she knew. The bottle wasn't random. It was part of his story. A story he didn't want to tell, but couldn't hide anymore. Then came the unraveling. He admitted he'd had a breakdown. He'd been mixing medications, lost in thoughts darker than he ever shared. The cookies, he said, were genuine, but the bottle was from a moment of despair. He'd tried to erase. He hadn't meant for her to find it, but he also hadn't been careful enough. What she uncovered wasn't a plot. It was a cry, buried in shame and silence. And while that didn't make it right, it made it human. She felt her heart twist, not just with fear, but with grief. Grief for the boy she raised, for the pain he carried alone, for the gift meant to reconnect but tangled in trauma. Their conversation turned raw. He cried. She'd done. Her instinct was still protection, still analysis, but she listened. And in that space, another truth emerged. He hadn't come to hurt her, but he had known how to come back safely either. The danger wasn't in malice, it was in emotional recklessness. And sometimes that can be just as dangerous. By the end of the call, nothing was resolved, but everything was revealed. The bottle was never meant to poison her body. It was the residue of what had poisoned their bond, unspoken pain, unresolved guilt, broken communication. What came next wouldn't be easy, but it would be honest. And for the first time in years, honesty felt safer than silence. Trust isn't rebuilt in a single phone call. Her next steps would have to be cautious, because once safety is shaken, it's never blindly granted again. After the call ended, she didn't cry. She didn't clean the kitchen, didn't put away the cookies, didn't throw out the bottle. She just sat, surrounded by the stillness that follows an emotional earthquake. Her thoughts moved slowly, like someone walking through fog. What happened wasn't closure. It was clarity, and sometimes clarity doesn't feel like peace. It feels like exposure. She realized healing doesn't always calm me, with hugs and apologies. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in space, in a breath that says, Asterisk, I survived this, but I'm not done yet. She didn't hate her son, but she didn't trust him either. Not yet. What he brought into her home wasn't just a box of cookies. It was a box of memories, triggers, and uncertainty. Now, she had a choice. Would she let this become another story of repeated trauma, or would she draw a line where healing could begin? She chose boundaries. not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Reconnection would have to happen on safer ground. In the weeks that followed, she went back to therapy, not because she was falling apart, but because she was ready to rebuild carefully. She journaled. She took walks. She didn't block her son, but she didn't answer every message either. She learned that forgiveness isn't an off switch, it's a spectrum. Some days, she missed him deeply. Other days, she felt nothing. And both were valid. Healing doesn't follow a perfect arc. It curves. It stalls. Sometimes it just rests. One afternoon, she told a friend, I'm not mad at him, but I'm not opening that door all the way yet. It wasn't bitterness. It was balance. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about survival. And sometimes surviving means making peace with imperfection. The cookies stayed on the shelf 4 days until she finally threw them away. Not because they were dangerous, but because she no longer needed the symbol. She had already gotten the message and moved forward as life settled again. She realized something deeper. Love, in its healthiest form, doesn't ignore red flags. It respects them. It doesn't rush to restore. It protects. First, her relationship with her son might never return to what it once was, but she had returned to herself, and in its quiet, powerful way. That was enough. She couldn't help but wonder, was this the ending? Or just the beginning of something more honest? So now the question is, what would you have done? Would you have trusted the gesture or listened to that whisper inside that said, be careful. This story isn't just hers. It belongs to anyone who's ever been torn between love and self-protection. It's a painful reminder that family I sent to always Safi, and sometimes the people we miss the most are the ones we need distance from. But what if distance isn't rejection? What if it's wisdom? Have you ever ignored your instincts just to keep the peace? How many times have you welcomed someone back, not because they changed, but because you just missed them? It's time to reflect, because the cost of ignoring warning signs is rarely immediate, but always real. The mother in this story didn't choose hatred. She chose boundaries. And in doing so, she chose herself. That kind of courage is quiet, but it echoes loud in the lives of those who've ever felt unsafe in their own homes. Let this be your reminder. Forgiveness doesn't mean exposure. You can love someone and still say no. You can hope for change and still demand respect. You can want healing without inviting harm. And most importantly, your safety. Emotional, physical, and psychological is not selfish. It's sacred. Never let guilt convince you otherwise. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever received a gift that made you question everything? Have you ever sensed danger where others only saw kindness? Share your story in the comments. We read every one. Let's create space for honest conversation, because real healing starts with being heard. And if this story brought you value, subscribe, turn on notifications, because the stories we tell here, Adira, human, and meant to help you protect your peace.